also known as the Commander.
The Commander.
What is that from?
That's from Star Wars, from Episode 3, the Clone Commanders, Commander Cody.
Oh, there's a guy in there named Commander Cody?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
yeah, I had to steal it.
Is he a badass?
He is a badass. I love the clones. Are one of my favorite parts about Star Wars.
Barry, you've seen that episode?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. He saw that, so...
Oh, he knows what I'm talking about.
He does. Barry, you can ask him. Barry, you know Commander Cody, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You thought he was a wimp, though. You thought he was a wimpy guy, right?
No way. You crazy?
Okay.
No, clones don't play.
Yeah, they don't play. Well, this is session number 29 of the Podcast Engineering Show, and if I can hit the button, the band will start. There we go. Yeah. Welcome to the show. The Commander's here.
I'm here.
Yeah. Yes, we're here. We're back. The Podcast Engineering Show. I'm your host, Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for big companies, Forbes, Dun & Bradstreet, as well as a bunch of business authors and companies. Every week on this show, we talk shop. We really get into the nuts and bolts of the audio engineering side of podcasting. We go deeper. We don't talk about marketing and numbers and downloads and apps and all that. We don't do that. We talk about the audio engineering side of it. Every week, you can learn stuff here. We have great guests. We have specialists and experts. Today we have a very special guest. The Commander is very special because he has a background in audio engineering as well.
I do.
Yeah, and we're going to talk signal chains. Please, this is just going to be great.
Oh, yeah, we're going to geek out for sure.
I've produced a lot of bands in my past. I worked in the music business. And when I entered podcasting about 4 years ago, I saw a huge lack of audio skills with podcasters, and that's why this show's here. That's what I have to offer. I have a lot of experience in that area, so we can solve a lot of the problems that come up, and it's a lot of fun too. Of course, Barry is with me. You already heard him. Barry, are you ready to go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Geez, jumping the gun there, Barry. All right. This show is brought to you by Podcast Engineering School. That's right. I am coming up with courses. In fact, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but the courses might be up there. Go to the website, podcastengineeringschool.com. I'm going to have courses on EQ and compression and mastering and editing, going much deeper into it than a lot of other people do, for sure. So podcastengineeringschool.com. You can also listen to our show anywhere you hear podcasts, but you already knew that. iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio. Even iHeartRadio. Who's listening to this show on iHeart? That's what I want to know.
I just found out that they have podcasts on there. Not gonna lie, yeah.
Right?
That's my next platform I'm shooting for.
What's funny is when you jump onto one of these new platforms, like Spotify isn't even official, doesn't have podcasts officially yet, but iHeart just started, and when you go on there, it's almost hard to find where they're hiding the podcasts.
Yeah, it's obviously not their forte.
Yep. So Cody Boyce is my guest. He's the Commander. He's a podcaster, number one. He's a podcast producer, and his company is Podcast Masters. And his website is podcastmasters.net, and he's also the co-host of Rogue Squadron podcast. What is that podcast about, Cody?
That podcast is all about Star Wars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you like episode 7? Be honest.
I loved episode 7. It is my current favorite.
Okay. How psyched are you for episode 8 on a scale of 0 to 100?
85, but I'm more psyched for Rogue One, which comes out December.
What's that? That's episode 9?
It is not episode 9. It is. It happens just a few weeks before the original Star Wars movie. So it's kind of a prequel, but not really. It's. Wow. I think it's gonna change a lot of people's perspectives on Star Wars. I'm really excited for that one, more so than episode 8, if you can believe it.
Interesting. Rogue One. Okay.
Yeah.
I love Star Wars. Me and my wife watch it. We, probably every 2-3 years, you kind of bring out the box set and watch them all in a row.
It's like 2-3 weeks for us.
Really? Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, you know what we do on this show. We have a lightning round we start with, or speed round. I forget what I call it. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So
Fast
the first,
round.
Yeah?
Fast round, yeah.
Fast round, yes. Thank you. And so this week, or the lightning round or the speed round is, first question, what shows do you produce? And I know you produce a lot. So your show is called Rogue Squadron Podcast. How many other shows do you produce, Cody?
We have about 8 full-time shows at the moment.
Awesome. And so you have one production process for the show that you co-host, and I assume you use a different process for the clients, right?
Yeah, mine's a lot more involved. We also stream live while we're recording, so it makes things a little more complicated, but also a lot more fun. And you know, if you have podcast clients too, you're not always getting the most pristine mic recording that you could possibly have. So
No.
it's a lot different when for the client shows, definitely.
Okay, cool. So that's it. So the second question of the speed round is, take us through the process of you record. Let's stick with your show, you're co-hosting and you're streaming live and everything. Take us through. You're about to sit down to record it. We don't need to hear about the prep and the notes and everything, but you're sitting down to record.
No, there's no notes. There are no notes.
Oh, see, that's easy. So take us through the process briefly, and then we'll unpack it after.
So as I'm getting everything set up, the most we've ever had is we have 4 people in one room. We've done that a few times. So we got 4 mics. I got 4 pairs of headphones running to everybody that's in the room, including me. I am sending audio through all the headphones and in the studio, and then also through Soundflower, which is running the mix of the entire session into OBS, which is a streaming software, and that is going live on Twitch, is where we chose to do our live streams.
Twitch.
So I'm recording, and I actually didn't mention my DAW. Logic Pro is my DAW of choice, and so we're recording in Logic. We're streaming to Twitch at the same time.
Interesting.
Yeah,
this is
it
cool.
took me a while to get it dialed in. Streaming, the audio stuff was easy. Trying to figure out the live stream and everything, that was a pain.
See, we're going to talk about OBS because from the courses I'm creating, I was looking into doing them live instead of doing self-study courses where I'll just upload videos and people can buy it and watch it and take the course whenever they want. I wanted to do it live, but all these webinar platforms are not good enough quality video and audio. So is OBS really legit high quality?
It's the best one that I found, and I'm on a Mac. What platform are you on?
I guess PC, but I do have one Mac. But
okay, yeah. A lot of the Twitch, this goes deep into the video game world, but a lot of the stuff was developed around PCs. Macs are always kind of the second choice for gaming and video and stuff. But it's the best one that I've tried a few. It's the best one, and it's just really easy to set up. Punch a few buttons, and you're good to go.
And so OBS is the software that streams it. Now, Twitch is what? Twitch is a platform where people can tune in and listen?
It is, yeah. So if you can imagine Ustream, Twitch is Ustream, but it's all about video gaming. And so most people that are on there are actually streaming themselves, playing video games, and people watch and comment along, and they chat with the guy or girl that's playing. But that audience is already so geared towards, the Star Wars and the nerd culture stuff that we talk about. That was like a perfect fit for us. So that's what we're up on there doing.
Interesting. So Twitch, is it like a platform where you can people search on there for Star Wars and they'll find your show?
Yeah, they can search Star Wars, and then there's it's usually sorted by whatever game someone's playing, but they do have a category for talk shows and things like that. So, and every podcast that's on there is under talk shows, and that's where people find us if they're browsing the stream.
Okay. And you said you're using PCs, right?
No, I'm using Mac.
Oh, you're using Mac, but you said the gaming stuff is usually built around PC.
Yeah, it was confusing to set up because a lot of it is centered around PC. People will go out and build a PC that's meant to just stream video. So there's a lot more software for PC than there is for Mac. But
okay,
that's why I settled on OBS. It's one of the few.
That's cool. So you fire that up, and then when you're getting started, you say, "Okay, we're ready. Let's go," and then you hit go.
Mm-hmm. Usually, yeah. We have some background music that plays. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and activate the stream early and just let that background music play. And that gives, time for some listeners to pop up into the feed and start chatting with us. And then after about five or so minutes, we turn the mics on and start going.
Okay. I hope you're playing some non-copywritten material there.
Yes, I am playing my own music in the background. Not to worry. I've gotten out of a lot of the questions that people, new podcasters have asked me, that's one of the big ones. Like,
right.
Can I just take that Van Halen song and use that? And it's like, no.
Yeah, actually Daniel J. Lewis just had I think it was either a webinar or an interview he did with some lawyer who actually knows all that stuff. And he mentioned in his email, I didn't see that interview or that presentation, but he said that and I'm sure a lot of you have heard that. Oh, if you use 30 seconds or less of anything, you can use up to 30 seconds and not be in trouble. And in the email, he's basically like, no, that's not true.
Yeah, the worst part about it is it's fair use is so subjective. So you could be like thinking that you're on the guidelines of fair use, and then at the end of the day, the publishing company just sends you a cease and desist or whatever it might be. It's subjective to decide what actually is allowed and what isn't.
Okay. So sticking with the live streaming, let's just finish that up, because you said that you use Soundflower to connect to OBS and then go to Twitch. So Soundflower is what, just a little routing program?
Yeah, it just routes things inside your computer from one platform to another.
So you just like pick in, out of here into that kind of, it's that easy?
Yeah, it's like a digital like a virtual patch cable.
Oh, that's so sweet. And that's a Mac thing. I'm sure on a Mac it's easy. On a PC, well, they make, what was one called? Audio Jack or Audio Cable?
Audio Hijack is by the same people, yeah.
Oh, Audio Hijack. Okay.
Yeah.
So it probably works well on PC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can figure out the same exact setup on either one. It's just going to have a few different names or terms along the way, I guess.
Well, as long as it works on a PC, because that's the problem. I mean, I was trying to do two things on my PC recently. I was trying to do a webinar and... this is what I was trying to do. Within Reaper, I was trying to... So I set up a webinar. Let's pretend I'm giving a webinar.
Okay.
Broadcasting a webinar. And I wanted to share my screen and show Reaper and show me working on audio. So I need my screen. That's easy. You could just say show my screen and it shows Reaper and it shows me doing whatever. But the sound, I wanted the sound to come from Reaper through the webinar software.
Yeah.
And every time it actually worked, but every time I went back to the webinar software to either look at the Q&A or look at something or type something or check a question, then I would go back to Reaper. It would, that noise like like some noise, like, trouble, it's like, really, dude? Like, I can't just switch windows and really, and it's so annoying.
They won't let you do that. Got to pick one.
I mean, this is weird. All right, so let's talk microphones now. Let's go through the process a little bit. What mics you got?
All right, well, I'll confess, audio people are gonna talk trash at me. I use a 57. And the reason I use a 57 is because I'm in the room with my co-host and we're about 2 or 3 feet away. His voice is extremely loud. He's a talker. He's a screamer. So I've tried a few different microphones, and basically in my mic, all you can hear is him talking. So one day I tested the 57, and since it's so less sensitive, I switched to that. We both have one, and it made a huge difference in terms of that interference.
So, and you're using a 57 right now?
I am, yeah. It's not too bad.
No way. No, it's not too bad at all. And so you have a nice pop filter on there, I'm sure.
I do, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because obviously you'd need that to get close to it. So that's awesome. So what are the other, if you have 4 people, what are the other mics? Are they all 57s?
No, they're not. I have a pair of AKG mics. I'll pull it off here so I can
there we go.
give you the proper term. Because I'm not really a gearhead. I'm like, I like this mic. It sounds good. I don't know what it's called.
There you go.
An AKG C1000S. It's a power dynamic, and I really, really like how it sounds. If I do when I do voiceovers and stuff like that, anything that's basically not a podcast, I usually use that one. I really like the sound of it.
And what does it look like? Is it like a handheld mic?
No, it's not handheld. It's like one of the longer ones. It kind of looks like a smaller shotgun mic, and it's gold.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's longer. Kind of looks like a giant pencil.
Oh, okay. I'll check that one out. I haven't. I've never used that one. Well, come on. Most mics I've never used.
There's so many.
There's so many.
And tried to that was the thing back when we were studying audio, is like you have to be up and up on all of the mics and what they sound like and which one you want to use. And I was like, there's so many mics. I can't memorize all these. I'm going to try a few and pick one that sounds good.
Right. Yeah. I remember from the studios, we had a bunch of mics, and it takes a few years to actually, have the chance to use all the mics in sessions and then hear what the real big engineers have to say about them. And let's try that mic. And then they're like, oh, that's awful, too boomy, or whatever. It doesn't fit the voice. Like, that's how you learn,
Right.
So it just takes time. So that's cool. And then you got all the headphones. And so or you're running all the mics through a mixer?
I do not have a mixer. I have an interface. The Motu Traveler is the one I'm using.
Motu Traveler. Okay, describe that and the inputs and stuff.
Yeah, so it has 4 XLR, 4 quarter-inch inputs, 8 quarter-inch outputs, and SPDIF, usual stuff like that, and a headphone output on the front. So what I do, this is part of what took me a while to figure out the Twitch setup. I send an output from 5 and 6 in the back into 5 and 6 to basically make like a bus within itself, and then I can send that to... That's how I send it to all the headphones, all the and to Twitch, basically. It's kind of confusing to explain. It's easier if you can see it. But yeah, since it has so many inputs and outputs, I can do whatever a mixer does with the interface. And since I run everything inside Logic, it operates just the same.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, look, you're taking an output and putting it back in because those inputs are what you're choosing in Soundflower to go out through OBS.
Well, pretty much. Logic is, once it comes back in, Logic is sending it to output 1 and 2, output 3 and 4, and then Soundflower all at the same time.
Okay. Right, so the Motu Traveler, I haven't seen that one, that audio interface. Sounds pretty cool. Motu's a great company, obviously.
Yeah, I love it. I've had it. It's the original model. It's probably 8 years old or older by now,
wow.
But it's been sturdy. Never had a problem with it at all. It's never crashed. It's bus powered FireWire, which is, you don't see too many of those. But yeah, I love it, man. It's my favorite little piece of gear in the studio.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so now, do you use any gating or any expanders? Because, people always ask me, actually, well, what do you do if there's 3 or 4 mics in a room and there's all this room noise? How do you handle that?
I definitely do use gates. That's probably one of my most used plugins that I have on the tracks.
Oh, it's a plugin. Okay.
Yeah, I run everything. Well, and I'm a anti-mixer kind of guy.
Okay. Like an external hardware mixer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am, just for simplicity reason. But yeah, I'm running all of my effects as plugins on all the tracks while it's recording, so I can hear the effect of the gate and the noise suppressor and everything while it's running and while we're streaming. But yeah, the gate is one of the things I use the most.
Okay, now those effects you're using there when you're recording, is that processing the input signal before it's recorded or after?
No, it's after, because it's all virtual, and that's the glory of it. Is if I overcompress something on accident while it's recording, it's not on the actual waveform. It's just the plugin, so I just turn it off, reset it, whatever I need to do. Right.
So this makes sense, because this is what I used to have almost the same setup as you as far as recording a podcast and also streaming at the same time. And so if you were not streaming live, you probably wouldn't even use a gate while you're recording.
No, probably not. I wouldn't have the effects really. I wouldn't need them until after the fact.
Right. You would just record it all raw and then process it later.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I try to recommend to people to do when they're getting into podcasting, especially if they have no audio knowledge or just limited audio knowledge, is just use a USB mic by itself or use an interface, record dry, and then you can start to toy around with that stuff after the fact, and that will help you learn it too. You can listen back as you're making changes on the effects and things like that. You can audibly hear what's going on while you're changing it.
Right. Now, how long did it take you to get the levels right? Because each mic, you have to adjust each mic, and then it goes through everything, and then it goes through Soundflower and OBS and Twitch. Like, a lot of trial and error there, getting the levels right?
Twitch was honestly, it was a headache. That was where most of the trial and error came in. But before we even decided to do live streaming, we had done enough episodes where I dialed in all the levels, and now I just have a template set up in Logic. I pop it open. Everything is set, especially because it's the same 2 co-hosts for every single show. I know what the input needs to be on the interface, and then all the plugins and all those effects are already set. So just I kind of pop it open and name the session, and we're good to go.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. All right, so then you broadcast it live, and it's out, and it's gone, but you're recording everything multi-track, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then you take us through the mixing process. Like, how nutty do you go? And I really want to just explain to the listeners now and to you, that I want to get into a little more audio a little more hardcore audio processing with you because you have that background. And like I mentioned, sometimes I'll ask people on the show, like, do you use EQ or compression? And they say, well, no, I don't really need it. And look, if you have a good mic and you use it properly and, it's podcasting, right? It's not the next, I don't know whose album. Who should I name?
Kanye. I don't know.
Kanye. Beyonce. I don't know. Does it matter?
Frank Ocean's hot right now.
It's not the next Metallica album. Ooh, there we go.
Oh, gosh. We can talk about that if you want to.
Yeah. Well, I heard the one song. They put up a video on YouTube. You heard that? Yeah. Look. It's no surprise. Are you surprised?
I am. I actually am. I thought after the semi-negative feedback of Death Magnetic that they would go a different direction. I really was hoping that they would. And it's supposed to be like a 3 or 4 disc or some crazy length of an album. So maybe this is just one song and they made a bad call by making that their single. But yeah, I was expecting something totally different. My co-host and we're diehard Metallica fans. We've been listening to him since we were kids. And yeah. Well,
how old are you? When did you graduate high school?
Class of 06. I'm 27 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm old. I graduated 90. But you know what, dude? 1988, Monsters of Rock, Giant Stadium. I saw Metallica open for 4 other bands. And in 89, I saw them twice on the Injustice for All tour.
Boom.
Just disgusting. Absolutely.
That was the peak. Those couple years, and then riding into after Black Album came out. That's just there. That was their peak.
Yeah, Black was weird because all of us older Metallica fans saw like Black was good, but it was like, oh man, they're going in a new direction.
Yeah, I say I've been a big Metallica fan since I was a kid, but by the time I started listening to them, almost all their material was already out.
Right.
So I got to
All right, well there you go. So we're not if you're producing podcasts, you're not producing the next Metallica record. So if you have a good mic, it's good. You don't have to go nuts with EQ and compression. But with you, Cody, I really want to, anytime you feel like you can comment on anything deeper you're doing with the audio, please do. So
sure.
With that, let's talk about mixing. You have everything recorded on separate tracks. What do you do?
Well, like I said, luckily for me, the template I've kind of refined enough that it's already there. But I do have to change things, for clients depending on what type of episode that they send me, how they recorded it. It might have been them in their car or something with a good idea. You never know what these guys decide to do.
That's a great one.
I have. Wow. Which is maybe a little frustrating from an audio standpoint, but at the same time, if you think the core of podcasting is the type of content, and I mean, they have a good idea, they have a good episode, or they're in the car with someone and they want to do an interview with them just kind of off the cuff, stuff like that sounds really cool. I mean, even if it doesn't sound good, quote, quote.
Right.
It's cool when they do stuff like that.
I agree. As long as the final audio is listenable and not atrocious. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, as long as you can hear it. But signal chain wise, so the first thing is an EQ. I have a hard high pass filter at about 120, and that floats depending on the voice and depending on their mic. It might go down to 100. It might go up to 140, 150. A small dip around 500. A small rise around like 1.8K, and then a gentle shelf from there up to the end of the spectrum.
Right.
That's kind of my EQ thing. And then later on in the chain, while I'm on the EQ thing, I have some like really, really hard notch filters because a lot of the voices, a lot of the mics, the de-esser is not going to do as good of a job as I want. So I have a crazy, crazy narrow notch filter. I usually set that at about 5 and about 6K, sometimes at 10, depending on the voice. A lot of the female voices, I have to put one at 10K as well. Mm. So I'm cutting out all those S's, as well as the de-essers in there already doing its job.
I see. So you don't notch out too much, though, do you?
No, not too. It's so narrow that it's like literally, it's a utility EQ.
Got it.
And that's really all it's taking out, which is awesome. Most of the stuff I use is our Waves plugins, by the way.
Oh, okay.
For anybody that's curious, yeah, I got like a huge pack of a lot of the Wave stuff, and I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It sounds really, really good.
Okay, so what Wave EQ is it?
Do you remember? That's the one Wave thing I'm not using. That's the native Logic EQ plugin.
Oh, the Logic EQ. Okay. Oh, by the way, about de-essers, I'll just say that typically the standard for de-essing is between 6 and 8K. 6 being, down towards 6K is more the male range, and sometimes up to 8K is the female range. But of course, it goes down to 5 and 10 and up to 10. 6 to 8 is kind of just that middle part there.
Right, yeah, and that will float too. And sometimes I don't even need those notch EQs in there. It totally depends on how SE the voice is and stuff.
How often do you have to do that? I mean, because I find I use, it depends on the mic and where it's recorded. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have people that, like, in one situation, they do not need a de-esser, and then they'll record, like, in a different room and with another person across from the mic, if it's a Blue Yeti, which I hate recording, but
me too.
Then they will need a de-esser. I don't know. So it depends on the mic and stuff. But what percentage of people do you need a de-esser on?
The de-esser goes on everybody.
Oh, okay.
And it's just a matter of where I pop that threshold at.
Got it.
But it's going to be in there just a little bit. I honestly have never. No one has like a beautiful mic and a nice preamp and all that stuff. I've always had to use at least a little bit of a de-esser.
Right.
Yeah, but those notch EQs, those are it totally situational.
It probably happens to you. You meet people in person, and they'll be talking, and like their S's are just like,
it's like, can I have a live de-esser?
Yeah. Can I put a de-esser in my ears?
Yes. I wonder if we'll ever get there. If we have like Google Glass headphones, and you can like totally put audio plugins like, as you're hearing people. The world.
Dude, imagine this. It'll recognize voices. You can actually lower the fader on someone right in front of you if you don't want to hear them.
Amazing. Turn on subtitles. That would be great.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That'd be awesome. If you're listening, Google, pay attention.
Yeah. Come on. Innovation. All right. So those are the EQ and the de-esser.
The EQ and the de-esser, yeah. And they're at different points throughout the chain. I can run through that later if you want me to. And then the gate is honestly the most utilized plugin for all podcasts because, as you know, most of the interview shows, I'll ask a question and then I'll sit here and I'll be quiet for a while and then you can hear like taps on the desk and lip smacking and stuff like that. So the gate just negates all of that. I use it probably the most out of anything else. Mm. And again, that's the threshold. It totally depends on how they recorded, how hot the mic was, et cetera, et cetera. And compressor is in there. I have the Waves. It's a virtual version of the 76, and I have that set.
Oh, the 1176?
The 1176, yeah. Okay. And that, again, is set kind of to a template, and I adjust the input and output as I need to, just to kind of get things balanced out. Those USB mics, like especially the ATR, if you're right up on it, it sounds crystal clear. And then as soon as you back up like too far, it's so quiet. So the compressor is like my main thing to keep that balanced out. Yeah. And the secret plugin that I use that makes everything sound as good as I can make it is the WNS Waves Noise Suppressor. And that just pretty much, if it's a nice room, but they don't have acoustic panels up and you hear some of that echo off the walls, it just immediately... It's all gone. The voice is right up front and center and super crystal clear. It's probably my favorite one. Wow. Besides the gate, this is the most used plugin that I have, yeah.
So it gets rid of like the reverby sound of the room.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the beautiful thing about it is that it reads the audio as it's going and gives you a suggestion of the general like dip of the frequency spectrum, and then you lock it in, and then you can adjust the threshold as to how much it's going to affect the sound.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
It is. I don't really tell anyone else to use it because, people that are asking me questions are on like Audacity or something and they don't have Wave stuff. There's nothing you can really do about it.
Right.
But it's one of the best ones that I have.
That's awesome. And do you use any like loudness leveling plug-in or any functionality in Logic Pro for that?
I have a limiter on the master chain, but I don't have anything like that on each individual mic. Just at the end of the master is a limiter, and then I have my loudness meter, so I can make sure I'm not gonna freak iTunes out by going over -16.
Oh, you do? Your loudness meter is after the limiter?
Yeah, it's at the very, very end, so I can see like exactly what the loudness is.
And is that also a Waves plugin?
Yeah, the WLM, just the loudness meter. But most Logic has one built in. I had the Waves one. I just got used to reading that one. It just sits there and tells you what it is. It doesn't really do anything. So you don't need like an expensive loudness meter. Just
right.
if there's one in your DAW, just use that.
And that, like, that's not really super quickly responsive. It has to hear like maybe even minutes of audio before it can give you an average. Is that true, or how does that work?
It has a short term and a long term one. It has basically like two spots on the plugin. So one is giving it to you like immediately as it's hearing it, and then the other is kind of the overall long term loudness. So I keep my eye on both as I'm going through.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But the quicker one must be. I mean, it's kind of useful. How do you use that? What information do you get from that quicker meter?
It's literally as I'm listening to the voices, I try to keep them right around -16 as it's going through, because the master chain is running while I'm going through and tweaking everything. Because again, I have the master chain as a template that I like and I use for everything else too. So I'm just going through and making sure the vocals are for each voice are right up where they need to be without going over -16 in the short term, and I just kind of monitor that as I go through.
Right. Okay. Now, talk to me about sometimes when audio. Well, yeah. Sometimes when your clients might send you some audio that's horrible. Talk to me about dealing with different situations and some of the tricks you've done, or some of the ways that you make it sound better.
Yeah. Well, I just fixed an interview for somebody. I think it was the Yeti, our most hated microphone. I can rant about that too.
Yeah.
I think it was on a table. I wasn't there, so I have we never are. But it was too far away from each of them, and there was this really annoying low frequency hum from like the fridge or something.
Yeah.
So I just cleaned that up. The noise suppressor was somewhat helpful, but because the trick was that they recorded it at such a low volume that by the time I compress it to bring it to raise it up, all that extra noise is just coming out like crazy.
Yeah.
So I took my favorite that notch filter that I had and tried to find that dial it into the frequency of that low humming refrigerator to cut that out. And then again, just a combination of everything that I used. I just had to dial it in. That's the one I had to spend the most time tweaking my settings, because a lot of them, if when I advise people before they start, I try to chat with them before they even start the show, and I say, get the Audio-Technica ATR, the USB mic. That's one of the most popular ones. Record this way, set it at about this level. So for the most part, when I'm getting the files, they're pretty similar. Obviously, the voices are different, but the levels and stuff are pretty similar. How they record it is pretty similar, so I don't have to do much tweaking. I kind of spent a month or so editing things to get this signal chain laid out the way I like it.
Right. Speaking of the Blue Yeti, one of the facets of that mic that I find that I appreciate especially very much is usually no one has a pop filter with that mic, and so if they do get too close, it pops and it's rough.
It is rough. The coolest thing about the mic is that you have the pickup selector. I guess that's the only benefit to getting that. If you're going to be traveling and you don't know if you're going to be at a conference table or just a solo episode, you have options. But at the same time, it's just that versatility isn't worth it, because at the end of the day, unless you're in such a controlled environment, that mic's just not going to do it for you.
Totally, and that's the exact reason a lot of my clients use the Blue Yeti, because of its versatility, and plus it's relatively cheap, $120 or something.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. The setup that I recommend to them is, like, if you are going to be doing an interview with someone face to face, I recommend a setup which is 2 mics going into, just a little 2-input audio interface into the computer.
Yeah.
And then, hopefully I can teach them, which I usually can, how to open Audacity and record it locally.
Yeah.
And that's not that hard. But I don't know. Some people, they just can't set that up. They're not like technical enough to do it, or they're traveling. Like, what if they're going to, in New York City, going uptown in a cab to someone's office to interview them? I mean, you don't want to bring 2 mic stands, 2 mics, 2 cables, the windscreens, the audio interface, the cables, the USB, the laptop. And I mean, that's too much. So the Blue Yeti, right. It helps then, but
it's convenient.
It's convenient in that respect, but in the sound quality. And look, I've heard, and I'm sure you have, if someone is using it in a very quiet room and they're by themselves and they have it in just plain cardioid mode pointed right at them and they're at the right distance, it sounds pretty damn good.
Yeah. Yeah, controlled room, it does sound good, and I think it sounds a lot better with guys than it does with girls because it's so sensitive to the high frequency. And if you have anyone with maybe a higher voice or more S's than you would normally expect, it takes that high frequency and just like crushes it, just gives it to you. It's it's not recommended. I've actually had a few people that start getting some elements ready for the show. They record like the intro and they want to just kind of get things pieced together before their first interview, and they want to know why it sounds the way it sounds. And I'm like, you got to get a different mic.
Yeah.
Like they buy the Yeti on a recommendation from some other podcaster,
right,
and then they hire a producer. They're like, "This mic doesn't sound good. What are you doing to my show? I can't hire you." I was like, "You need a new mic. It's $60. Go get it."
Exactly.
Yeah, I recommend the ATR to like anyone that's new and wants no technical knowledge needed to run it.
Exactly.
On the mobile setup, really quick, like that versatility. I have 2 new clients actually that don't have a laptop. They have desktops. So for traveling, what I've actually recommended is the Zoom H4n mobile recorder, which I have one of those things. I love that thing. And then they have 2 ATR 2100s with the screen on there and those little mini stands so they don't take up too much space that just sit on the desk.
Right.
So they run 2 of those short mic cables into the Zoom, and then it records it right there, and then they just kind of copy it to the computer with the SD card.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good setup.
And you really, those things are cool too, because if you need to, you can record 4-track as well. You can record the 2 inputs and you can record the mics that are on top of the H4n. That's a little versatile recorder. I love that thing.
Right. And I think I've never had a Zoom. I've only seen a couple, but I think the H5 or the H6 or both, you can actually get a separate, like an attachment. So you can literally plug 4 XLRs into it, I think.
Yeah, well, one of them I think does have 4 inputs.
Nice.
One of the bigger ones. That must be like probably the H8 or something crazy like that. But yeah, they're just going to keep going and add more on. But yeah, I mean, you can. There's one of them that does have 4 XLR inputs in there.
Right. So actually, Barry's here, and he has a way that he has recommendations he makes to customers. So Barry, when you're telling people, what they need to have a little mobile setup, what do you tell them?
You're going to need a couple of horses or a couple of mules, saws, hammers, nails.
All right. See, this is important tools of podcasting we're talking about here.
There must be an Amish podcast he's talking about. No, I love that.
Oh, my God.
I'm sorry we left you out of the conversation for so long, man.
I know. Seriously. Cody, listen to this one, though.
Beans, coffee, and biscuit, and a little piece of fatback.
Barry,
so you
what'd
gotta
you
have before every episode.
Right? Barry, what'd you have for breakfast?
Beans, coffee, and biscuit, and a little piece of fatback.
I love that one. Oh, speaking of Cody Boyce, who, we're talking about his production and his setup here. Yeah, you know what's coming. He's known as the commander. He's the co-host of the Rogue Squadron podcast. Barry, you've heard that show. What did you hear when you listened to that show?
And they were cussing up a storm. Profanities left, profanities right.
Barry is spot on. That's so true.
Jeez. What else, Barry?
Every second word was a F word.
Damn, Barry, you did your homework. That's about right. Straight accurate, man.
Telling you, he just heard your show. That was his feedback.
Thanks for listening.
All right, so editing, once you have it all mixed down in editing, do you go nutty with the ums and ahs, or do you like some of my clients want to take and I'm sure you don't, but I just feel like saying this. So, do you want to take a question you asked later in the interview and put that more towards the beginning of the interview?
I haven't done that yet. I haven't offered to do that yet, and luckily no one has thought of it. I'm not. I will not do that. I don't personally go too crazy with the ums and ahs, but it totally depends on who the host is and how comfortable they are in interviewing. It's especially important to pay attention to that stuff, like the first 10 or so episodes, and then they start to get into kind of a habit and they get more comfortable with it. If they've never done a podcast or done much interviewing or anything before. But I have some that I don't even have to take any mistakes out. They hit go, they interview, and it's good throughout the whole thing. So it's situational. Depends on the client for sure.
Right. Yeah. How about your own show?
No, since we do it live, I literally just, unless there's like a technical mishap and we like lose connection or something, I literally I let it run throughout the entire thing, and set the locators and it's good to go.
So now, see, I like that because the previous show I used to do, which was called Social Media Unscrambled, which has been abandoned, unfortunately, because it was an awesome show. But we did it live. We recorded it and we also broadcast it live. And I love that because you get in the mode of you're live. There's no stops and, there's no redos. There's no wait. Oh, hold on. Let me say that again. I didn't pronounce it right.
Right.
You end up just making fun of yourself and each other when these little mishaps happen. Is that what you guys do?
Oh, that's one of my favorite parts. My co-host, he goes by Mopar. He will frequently just create words out of thin air as he's trying to talk. And he can't think of what's going to come up, and he'll just make something. He'll just combine two words or whatever. That's the best part. And we just rip on each other throughout the whole thing if we make mistakes. It's definitely my preferred format. But it did take a while to get used to that. The first few streams we would do, and because we didn't start streaming until, I don't even know, like episode 55 or something like that. But I would go back for the audio portion and cut some things out and then send that to iTunes. But we've developed the habit, and now it's live. It's one take.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah. It also depends on the type of show too. It's definitely a chill conversation, feel like you're in the room with us type of show. So it makes sense to do it like that in one take. Others they have a lot more of a storytelling aspect maybe, and that takes more nuanced editing, right, just to make sure it comes across the way it needs to.
Yeah, like I co-host the show called the Profit First podcast, and it's just me and Mike Michalowicz, and it's like two knuckleheads hosting a show. I mean, it's so funny. It's like the morning zoo.
Yeah.
The mistakes make it way funnier, but that's that type of show. But like you said, if it was, a narrative
right
NPR piece, you
exactly.
wouldn't want two knuckleheads just going off.
No, unless they're going for that type of dynamic now. I don't know. But no, I do love doing it that way. The very first podcast I ever heard, and still my favorite, is the Joe Rogan Experience. So we very much adopted his kind of format when we started out. I was like, if we're going to podcast, let's just model him. He's successful. We literally did 3-hour episodes for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, it was sometimes a lot of fun, sometimes painful to get through. It's like, oh, we got another hour left. What are we going to talk about? I don't know.
Wow.
That's when just stop recording. It's 2 hours. It doesn't matter.
It's good enough.
It shouldn't matter. We forced conversation to happen. But no, we've narrowed it down, and we just kind of go until we don't have anything else to say, and then we cut it. They're all about an hour and 15 now.
Nice. All right, so I want to ask you about resolutions of your MP3s, the final MP3s. But first, I want you to ask Barry, of course, Barry, the maintenance guy who's here with me. And by the way, it's not Barry White. Everyone thinks it's Barry White. They're like, oh, you got Barry White clips. I'm like, no, this is Barry, the maintenance guy. He was in my building in New Jersey. He was the maintenance guy in the building. And he used to come in and sit down and talk and tell stories. And I sort of like really slowly, kind of slyly put mics in front of him.
Yeah.
And I just got him. Anyway, ask Barry what his favorite part of the frequency spectrum is.
Barry, what's your favorite frequency spectrum?
The bottom.
The bottom.
The bottom.
Gotta keep the low end. Gotta keep the low end present, man.
I like the way he's saying it, like, duh.
The bottom.
Yeah. What else? What else would Barry say?
He said so many things.
I think I dozed off or something.
Well, yeah, you didn't talk for like the first half hour, man. I lost you.
All right, so when you mix down the final MP3, what are you going, mono or stereo, and what bit rate?
Oh man, this is such a debate right now. Everyone I talk to has a different opinion. And
there's no right answer, by the way.
Pretty much not.
Yeah,
no.
pretty much.
I bounce in stereo. I bounce at 24-bit, 44.1. I record in that as well, and then I'm at 128K
Stereo
bit rate. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've tried a bunch. I thought I needed to be super high fidelity, so I bounced a few at 320, and I didn't notice a huge difference. I mean, I did, but I know no one else would, and the file size was just too huge.
Right. Well, some people would even say that 128 stereo, it's too huge of a file. I mean, you do an hour 15 podcast, it's probably 70 megabytes.
Yeah, but it's 2016. If you can't like download a 70 megabyte thing over your Wi-Fi, I don't know. I don't know.
That's my argument as well. That's exactly what I say.
Any argument that has to do with the file size itself, or my host will only let me have 100 megabytes a month. Well, spend $5 more and upgrade your storage space. It's like 2016 should not be about a couple megabytes. I think that's very silly.
I think that's very quotable, what you just said. I think I might clip that and play it in future episodes. No, but another thing. That's another thing. I think a lot of podcasters. Well, see, some people. Let me start again. People come to podcasting from different angles, and a lot of individuals come to podcasting. They don't want to spend any money, like literally $0. People on Facebook always asking questions. What can I use besides Skype that costs $0?
Yeah. Oh, they go into the podcasting groups and just leech. It's like, tell me all the tips that you spent years to learn that are free that I can do right now.
Yeah. And look, there's nothing wrong with that, but I agree with your argument that, like, look, spend a little money. It's okay. You can spend a little and it'll be great.
Well, you have to.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you still want a $0 budget, you're not gonna be able to put it out there because you have to have a host. You have to spend at least $5, or something a month on that. So, I mean, if you're gonna commit, you might as well take it at least somewhat seriously. I would say. Totally.
Yeah. So I know some people, well, especially more popular shows, if they're going to get downloaded a lot more, and they're going to actually be charged on bandwidth. That's a time, well, Rob from Libsyn told me that's a time when they, instead of going 128 stereo on their MP3, they'll go to 64 mono, which is actually the same resolution because it's half. But so 64 mono is the same resolution. And the only thing is it's mono. So all the music gets collapsed down to mono. And of course, do you do any panning of voices?
I did early on, just gently. I would say 10 left and 10 right, nothing extreme.
Yeah.
Because we do, I mean, if we think about how we're sitting in the room, we are sitting next to each other about 2 or 3 feet apart, but it didn't do too much of a difference for me to keep it in. I just keep everything. The voices themselves are straight mono now, straight center.
I actually, well, if it's 2 people, like this episode, when I mix it, it'll be, I'll be 11 to the left, you'll be 11 to the right.
Okay.
And it just creates, to me, it just creates that little separation. It's almost subliminal in a way, but it's separation. It's like in music when you have a guitar and a bass guitar, and like they're sort of clashing in here and there, and they're sort of melding, and you want to separate them a little more so you can kind of EQ one or the other, just so it separates it a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of what I feel that it does. Not necessary, of course, but...
No, yeah, not necessary. And it's kind of, I think at that point, that's something that the audio guy inside you wants to do that kind of, just so you can, so you know what it sounds like.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Well, and plus, look, if I'm going stereo anyway, for the sake of the music, I'm going to use the stereo spectrum for the voices, slightly. That's my philosophy.
So you said, no, I agree with you. So you said for the sake of the music, so what's your take on the mono stereo thing?
So look, if someone, to keep the file size down or to keep the bandwidth down, if someone wants to go mono, I'm okay with it. But for my show, I don't want my music collapsed to mono. So I want it stereo. So I just do it in stereo. That's all.
Yeah, well, and the same reason here is that we have background music. So if that was mono, that would swarm our voices. Oh, I never talked about side chaining. The background music, if it was in mono, would swarm our voices a lot more, and it would be harder for us to punch through. Whether we're in stereo, the voices are taking up that center spot, and the music can fill the rest of the spectrum. When you're in stereo like that. Yeah, so that I think it's super important. Some people, I guess, if you literally have like 5 seconds of music and then talk and then 5 seconds of outro music,
right.
But I wouldn't recommend that short of music anyways.
Right,
you got to break it up with something.
All right, cool. Well, you mentioned side chaining. We got to talk about this.
Yeah, that's it's huge. I do this for all my clients automatically, and I don't know if anyone knows enough to like appreciate what's happening. But I've heard a lot of shows where the music starts super, super loud, and then you hear someone here in the background like giving the intro of the podcast, and they're like trying to shout over the music. It's just so vital to make sure the music isn't so quiet, make sure it still has its presence, but the vocal is front and center. So every vocal track in all the episodes I do are bussed through, and they're side chained to the main music track. So whether, just in case, because if I move stuff around that way, I know every voice is part of the bus.
Right.
But yeah, so I have it's another Waves. It's the C1 compressor, and I have that just side chained through one of the buses, and that is on all the music tracks that I do for all the shows.
There you go. And if you're listening, I know we talked about side chaining an episode or two ago, but actually, yeah, Brian Orr. When I interviewed Brian Orr, he's like, I asked him something about side chaining. He's like, I knew you were going to ask me. He's like, I could fake it with everything else, but damn it, I don't know what that means. Anyway, so
I'm glad you brought it up though, because I almost forgot. And it's one of the I keep saying every plugins. That's my favorite plugin, but side chaining I do it all the time. So I'm glad I got to talk about it finally.
Yeah. So the effect is, if you're listening to this and you're still not sure what a side chain is, the effect of it is when any voice on Cody's show, when any person speaks, their voice gets sent to a little like side door of the compressor that's on the music, and when the person speaks, the music gets compressed.
Yes,
and gets lowered so that the person's voice is there, but the music gets lowered so the person's voice is more clear.
Right. Yeah. It's basically the compressor is only getting triggered by one of the voices. That way, when they're talking, music cuts down. When they're not talking, it comes back up just slightly, so you can hear it, and it stays up in there. You can hear it.
Right. So
let's
said
the same thing twice.
I know we're getting. What'd you say?
I just said the same thing twice in a row.
Did you? Oh, that's awesome. Barry does that too. Barry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some of the music production you've done.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting toward the end here. We don't have time to hear the whole history of, so Cody, how did you get started in the, no. Tell us about some of the audio you did. What were you recording and how did you make it sound good? Things like that.
Yeah. I started producing, I guess I kind of technically started producing while I was still in school, but it was about a year after I graduated. I met another producer here in Columbus, Ohio, and we hit it off, and we've been working together ever since. And he has since moved out to Los Angeles. And now that podcasting kind of popped up on our radar, I'm handling the podcast portion, and he's handling the music portion. But we still collab on everything. But we are, from our core, we're hip-hop focused, so we kind of coined a term, urban alternative, which we use for most of our music, because a lot of it starts with a hip hop beat, but we'll bring in a lot of instrumentation from different genres. And our favorite thing to do for that variety is just to collaborate with people that may not even like hip hop. Like we'll bring in, sax players in that are funk players that don't like hip hop at all to get on these tracks, and it just throws a whole different vibe on things. So that's kind of how we approach the majority of what we work on. It's has those urban roots, but it has, we'll go from jazz to classical to kind of film music, depends. But it all comes from the same place.
And how does producing podcasts, how does making podcasts sound good differ from making your urban alternative sound good?
It's so much easier. I tried to tried to conceptualize that like when I first started podcasting. I was like, I don't have to work on 100 different tracks of music. This is crazy. It's 2 voices and a music bed. But yeah, like when things have changed so much, obviously now with the advent of laptops and the RAM, you can record as many tracks as you want, but a lot of our sessions will get up to 100 tracks, if not more. And that's, raw recordings before any mixing or anything like that takes place. So the amount of time that goes into a full song as opposed to a full podcast episode is just so drastically different. It's pretty intense. It really is.
There you go. So if you're a podcast producer and you've only produced podcasts, if you've never produced any music, now you know that a song or a track can have 50 tracks or 100 tracks on it, and it gets nutty. But there's method to all that madness too.
There is. Oh yeah, there is. And usually when they get up that high, it's because we have a lot of live instrumentation going on. You'll bring in a guitar player for something particular, and there might be 10 tracks of just guitar. Same for the vocals, same for bass or piano or whatever, and that's how it just starts to stack up real quick.
Yeah, and it reminds me of back when I was in the studios, like you'd have a nice, 72 channel board SSL, and you'd have a 24 track tape. So you'd have 22 tracks at the most usually, because the last track, it depends if it was syncing with anything. There'd be SMPTE code on track 24. But at least you'd have 22 tracks, or up to 22 tracks. But on the board, you would end up using like 50, 60 faders because you have all these effects coming back. You have, stuff you're cross-patching into its own track to do fun effects with and everything like that.
Yeah.
I might have to, I don't know. It doesn't apply to podcasting, but I would love to just be in a big studio and just go through all the tricks and all the routing tricks and all the cool things you can do, like delay throws. And I mean, it's awesome. It's crazy.
It's a world that we don't get to see as much nowadays. If we're coming up with the advent of the DAW and your laptop, it's just something that you don't really get to experience as much, which is unfortunate. And I'm not totally on board with full analog or full digital. I think everything it's always a combination of the two. There's benefits to both. There's things that sound really great about both things, and when you combine the two, I think that's where things really start to take off. You can notice a difference in quality, a difference in the sound itself. When we record tracks, we send a lot of things. We send we'll group tracks and send stems through some actual analog UAD equipment back in the studio in LA, and the difference in sound, no levels, no effects, just running it through an analog gear. It changes the sound like crazy, like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. And if you're only in the box forever, you just wouldn't know that. So experimentation is key always.
Yes, that's tremendous. Well, this is a good place to end. Cody Boyce, the commander and co-host at Rogue Squadron Podcast. He's a podcast producer at Podcast Masters. And the website is podcastmasters.net. Go check it out. I like your website, too. I like the theme. It has those pictures in the background that stay still when everything else is scrolling.
Yeah, the parallax, I'm told that's called.
Yeah, right? That's pretty cool. Well, thanks, Cody. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me on.
This has been a great episode, and we're happy you're here to listen. Thanks for joining us. We love hanging out and talking about the audio engineering side of podcasting. Don't forget our website, podcastengineeringschool.com. And I'm not keeping up with my publishing schedule, but by the time this comes out, the courses may be there. So go check it out, podcastengineeringschool.com. And of course, Cody, you got to say sound great with me, by the way.
Got to say what?
Sound great.
Sound great.
Right? Ready? Here we go. Until next time, sound great!
Sound great!
street instead